Your baby didn't make it. I'm so sorry. Antonia Johnson stared at Dr. Laura Smith, her world shattering into a million pieces. No, this couldn't be real. She'd heard her daughter cry. 3 seconds of sound before they rushed her away. That wasn't a death rattle. That was life. I want to see her. Antonia's voice broke. Mrs. Johnson, I don't think that's wise. The trauma of, I want to see my daughter. Her scream echoed through the hospital room, raw and primal. Jordan's hand tightened on her shoulder, his jaw locked in a way she'd never seen before. They brought a tiny bundle. Antonia held her baby, cold, still, honey-brown skin perfect against the white blanket, and sobbed until she had nothing left. The nurse took her away. Dr. Smith gave her pills for the pain, paperwork to sign, condolences that meant nothing. 2 days later, Antonia left the hospital empty-handed and broken.
The nursery door stayed closed for 87 days. Antonia counted each one. She'd wake up at 3 a.m., the exact time she'd gone into labor, and stare at the ceiling of their bedroom while Jordan pretended to sleep beside her. Some nights she'd find him in his study, still dressed in his suit at dawn, staring at nothing. They moved around each other like planets in separate orbits, bound by gravity but never touching. The house had become a mausoleum. Every room held ghosts. The cream-colored rocking chair in the corner of the living room, where Antonia had planned to nurse, the mobile hanging above the crib, woodland creatures frozen mid-dance, gathering dust. Jordan had offered to pack it all away after the first week. Antonia had screamed at him until her voice gave out. Those things were all she had left. She stopped answering her phone. Her mother called every day. Her sister sent care packages filled with casseroles Antonia never touched. The grief counselor Dr. Smith had recommended left 3 voicemails before giving up. Antonia deleted them all without listening. Jordan threw himself into work. That's what he called it, work. He'd leave before sunrise and return after midnight, smelling like expensive cologne and something else, something sharp Antonia couldn't identify. His knuckles were bruised one Tuesday. He said he'd hit them on a shipping container. She didn't ask questions. She didn't have the energy to care. The only thing that broke the silence was Jordan's voice, soft and careful, like he was afraid she'd shatter if he spoke too loud. You need to eat something, Antonia. I'm not hungry. You haven't left the house in 2 weeks. I don't want to leave. Baby, please, don't call me that. Her voice was ice. I'm not anyone's baby anymore. I'm not anyone's mother. He'd walked away then, and she heard his study door close with a gentleness that felt worse than slamming. Jordan never slammed doors. Jordan never raised his voice. Jordan was perfect and patient, and it made her want to scream, because how could he just function? How could he shower and shave and go to work and pretend their daughter hadn't been stolen from them? Because that's what happened. Antonia knew it in her bones. That 3-second cry wasn't a death rattle. She'd researched it obsessively those first few weeks, reading medical journals at 4 a.m. until her eyes burned. Babies who died during delivery didn't cry. They didn't make sound. But Dr. Smith had been so certain, so sympathetic, so thoroughly convincing with her soft voice and her practiced condolences. Antonia had signed the cremation papers in a fog of grief and Vicodin. There was no body to bury, just a death certificate with her daughter's name, Lily Marie Johnson, and a small urn Jordan kept in his study that Antonia couldn't bring herself to look at. By month 3, Antonia had stopped crying. The tears had run dry, leaving behind something harder, something hollow. She moved through the house like a ghost haunting her own life, and Jordan watched her with eyes that held secrets she was too broken to decode. She should have known then, should have seen the truth hiding behind his careful composure, but grief has a way of making you blind to everything except the pain. It wasn't until that Tuesday afternoon at Brighton Market, when she heard that cry again, that Antonia finally opened her eyes. And when she did, the woman who'd spent 3 months dying came roaring back to life. Jordan had forced her out of the house that Tuesday. Not physically, but with the kind of quiet insistence that made Antonia too tired to argue. Just to the market, he'd said. 15 minutes, I'll go with you. I don't need a babysitter. I know, but I need groceries and I can't tell the difference between cilantro and parsley. He'd smiled, small and sad, and Antonia had hated how much effort it took him to pretend things were normal. She'd gone alone. Jordan's phone had rung the moment they reached the parking lot, another work emergency, and he looked at her with apology already forming on his lips. She'd waved him off. Better to be alone anyway. Better not to have witnesses when she inevitably broke down in the cereal aisle. Brighton Market was too bright, too loud, too full of people living normal lives. Antonia kept her head down, grabbing items without looking at them. Bread, milk, things that would sit in the refrigerator untouched. She was reaching for oranges when she heard it. The cry. Not just any infant's wail, that specific pitch, that particular rhythm, the same stuttering cadence that had lived in her nightmares for 87 days. 3 months of grief had carved that sound into her DNA. Her hand froze. The orange dropped, rolling across the floor. Antonia's head snapped toward the sound, her heart stopping mid-beat. Across the produce section, Dr. Laura Smith stood beside a stroller, bouncing a fussy baby girl. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, a cardigan, looking nothing like the white-coated authority figure who'd handed Antonia a death certificate. She looked normal. She looked like any other mother shopping for dinner. But that baby, that cry. Antonia's feet moved before her brain caught up. She ducked behind a display of watermelons, her hands shaking so violently she had to grip the metal shelf to steady herself. This was insane. This was grief-induced psychosis. Every baby cried. Every infant sounded the same to devastated mothers looking for ghosts. Except Dr. Smith adjusted the baby's onesie, pulling it down over a tiny shoulder, and Antonia saw it. Small, crescent-shaped, perfectly curved against honey-brown skin. A birthmark on the left shoulder blade. The world tilted sideways. Antonia had told the nurse about that birthmark, had specifically asked them to check for it. Jorda's entire family had it, his mother, his uncle, his late father. A genetic signature passed down through generations. She'd mentioned it during intake, during labor, had made the nurse write it down because she wanted to see it, wanted confirmation that this baby was theirs. The nurse had never come back with an answer. Dr. Smith delivered the death news instead. Antonia's phone was in her hand, shaking so hard she almost dropped it. She steadied her wrist against the watermelon display, zooming in, clicking photo after photo. The baby's face, the birthmark, Dr. Smith's profile, the stroller, everything. Evidence. Proof she wasn't losing her mind. Dr. Smith turned toward the checkout, oblivious, cooing at the infant in a sing-song voice that made Antonia's blood turn to ice. She watched the doctor pay for her groceries, watched her load the stroller into a silver Honda, watched her drive away. Antonia stood in the produce section for 10 minutes after they left, staring at the photos on her phone, her entire body shaking with something that wasn't quite grief anymore. It was rage. She drove home 20 miles over the speed limit, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Jordan's car was already in the driveway when she arrived. She burst through the front door, phone extended, words tumbling out in a frantic rush. Jordan, look at this. That's her. That's Dr. Smith. That's our baby. Jordan was in the kitchen when Antonia burst through the door, his jacket already off, sleeves rolled up. He turned at the sound of her voice, concern flashing across his face at her frantic state. Antonia, what? Look! She shoved the phone at him, her hands trembling so violently the screen blurred. Look at her. That's Dr. Smith. That's our baby, Jordan. That's Lily. He took the phone, his expression shifting from concern to confusion as he scrolled through the photos. Antonia watched his face, searching for validation, for belief, for anything that said she wasn't insane. This was today? His voice was quiet, too quiet. An hour ago, Brighton Market, I heard her cry, Jordan, the same cry from the delivery room. And the birthmark, look at the birthmark, your family's birthmark. I told the nurse to check for it and she never came back. And then Dr. Smith said, Stop. Jordan held up his hand, still staring at the phone. He zoomed in on the crescent-shaped mark, his jaw tightening with each second that passed. When he finally looked up, Antonia barely recognized him. The warmth was gone. The gentle, grieving husband had vanished, replaced by something cold and lethal. His eyes held a darkness she'd never seen before.
ancient and dangerous. Who else have you told about this? No one. I came straight home. Jordan, what are we going to do? We need to call the police. We need to... No police. His voice was flat, absolute. He set her phone down on the counter with careful precision, then pulled his own phone from his pocket. Not the iPhone he always carried, a different one. Sleek, black, the kind of device that looked designed to disappear. Jordan, we can't just... Juno. He turned away from her, the phone already at his ear. I need everything on Dr. Laura Smith at Brighton Memorial Hospital. Everything. Financial records, property holdings, known associates, traffic patterns, where she buys her fucking coffee. You have 4 hours. Antonia stared at his back, ice flooding her veins. That wasn't how normal people talked. That wasn't how import-export business owners gave orders. Yes, everything digital and physical. And Juno, this is priority alpha. Pull whoever you need. He paused, listening. Because someone stole my daughter, and I'm going to make them understand what that costs. He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Marcus, I need a full surveillance team on a silver Honda Civic. He rattled off a license plate number from memory. Anthonia's photos had been too blurry to capture it. How did he know? Subject is a female, late 30s, currently in possession of an infant. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to, every breath she takes. Non-contact observation only, until I say otherwise. Another call. Another set of orders delivered in that same cold, clinical tone. Then another. Antonia watched her husband transform into someone she'd never met, barking instructions about background checks and asset traces and surveillance protocols with the ease of a man who'd done this 1,000 times before. When he finally turned back to her, she took an involuntary step backward. Jordan, her voice came out small. What are you doing? Who are those people? He looked at her for a long moment, something like regret flickering across his face before the ice returned. Sit down, Antonia. I don't want to sit down. I want to know what the hell is happening. I want to know who you just called. I want to know how you... I'm not an import-export businessman. His words cut through her rising panic like a knife. I never have been. I'm the head of the largest criminal organization in this city, and Dr. Smith just made the worst mistake of her life. The kitchen tilted sideways. Antonia gripped the counter to keep from falling. You're what? Sit down, Jordan repeated, gentler this time. We're getting our daughter back, but first you need to understand who I really am. Junho arrived at midnight. Antonia had spent the last 6 hours listening to Jordan explain a life she'd never known existed. The business trips were territory negotiations. The late nights were operations. The bruised knuckles were exactly what she'd feared but never let herself believe. He'd kept her separate, he said, kept her clean from the violence and the blood because he'd wanted to give her something normal, something safe. She'd married a ghost, a carefully constructed lie wrapped in expensive suits and gentle smiles. And now, sitting in Jordan's study, a room she'd barely entered in 3 years of marriage, Antonia realized she didn't care. Monster or saint, criminal or businessman, none of it mattered. The man who'd held her through 87 days of grief was getting their daughter back. The doorbell didn't ring. Junho simply appeared, let in by someone Antonia hadn't even known was in the house. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He nodded at Jordan with the familiarity of a soldier greeting his commander. Boss, Mrs. Johnson. His voice was respectful, careful. He'd probably heard about the dead baby. Everyone in Jordan's world had probably heard. Except it wasn't dead. It was stolen. What do you have? Jordan's voice was ice. Junho set his laptop on the desk, fingers flying across the keyboard. Dr. Laura Smith, 42, 15 years at Brighton Memorial, stellar reputation, awards for neonatal care. On paper, she's perfect. On paper, Antonia repeated, her voice hollow. On paper, Juno confirmed. He pulled up a document that made her stomach turn. Off paper, she's drowning. Gambling debts to 3 separate casinos totaling $230,000. Mortgage 3 months behind. Credit cards maxed. She's been bleeding money for 2 years.
Jordan leaned forward, his expression unreadable. How does a respected doctor rack up that kind of debt? Poker. High-stakes tables at the Belmont. She's been banned from 2 casinos already for erratic behavior. Junho clicked through more files, financial statements, casino footage, credit reports. She's desperate, and desperate people make terrible choices. "Show me the children," Jordan said quietly. Junho's fingers hesitated for just a moment before he pulled up a new folder. 8 photos appeared on the screen. 8 infants. 8 families destroyed. These are the cases I could verify in the last 4 hours, all delivered by Dr. Smith in the last 18 months, all declared stillborn or died shortly after birth, all had private cremations arranged through the same funeral home. He clicked on the first photo. Baby Martinez. Parents were undocumented, didn't push back on the cremation. Baby Lee. Single mother, drug history, CPS involvement. Nobody questioned it. Anthonia felt bile rise in her throat. She targeted vulnerable families. Yes, Junho's voice was gentle. Families she thought wouldn't fight back, wouldn't have resources, wouldn't be believed if they tried. And our daughter? Jordan's knuckles were white against the desk. Junho pulled up a final document, a ledger, handwritten, photographed from what looked like Dr. Smith's home office. Names, dates, amounts. Anthonia's eyes caught on the bottom entry. Johnson baby girl, 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Crescent birthmark, $85,000. Buyer, pending. She hasn't sold Lily yet, Junho said quietly. Based on the ledger, she's still vetting buyers. Premium price because of the birthmark apparently makes the baby easier to explain as a legitimate adoption to nosy relatives, more believable as natural family. Anthonia's vision blurred. Her daughter had been reduced to a ledger entry, a commodity with a price tag and selling points. Jordan stood abruptly, his chair slamming back. For a moment, Anthonia thought he'd put his fist through the wall. Instead, he turned to Junho with deadly calm. "I want her buyer list, every name, every contact, every conversation, and I want to know where she's keeping Lily." "Already working on it. I'll have locations by morning." "You have 2 hours." Jordan's smile was terrible. "Because we're going to make Dr. Smith an offer she can't resist."
Dr. Smith's house was modest for someone selling babies at $85,000 apiece. A small colonial in the suburbs with a manicured lawn and a minivan in the driveway. The kind of place where neighbors brought casseroles and complained about property taxes. Anthonia sat in a surveillance van 2 blocks away, watching the doctor's living room on 3 different camera feeds. Jordan had explained the setup twice, but her brain couldn't hold the technical details. Something about Junho's team planting equipment during the doctor's morning hospital shift. Cameras in the smoke detectors, microphones in the outlets, a web of surveillance that made Anthonia's skin crawl even as she was grateful for it. Jordan stood beside her in the van, adjusting his tie. He dressed for the part. Bespoke suit, Italian shoes, a Rolex that probably cost more than Dr. Smith's mortgage. He looked like money. Old money. The kind of wealth that didn't ask questions about paperwork. "You remember the signal?" he asked quietly. Anthonia nodded, unable to speak. Her hands were shaking again. They hadn't stopped since Junho had confirmed the address 2 hours ago. Lily was in that house. Her daughter was breathing the same air as the woman who'd stolen her. "If it's too much, if you need me to stop..." "Don't stop." Her voice was steel. "I want to hear every word. I want to watch her try to sell my baby like a used car. And then I want to watch you destroy her." Jordan's expression softened for just a moment before the ice returned. He leaned down, kissed her forehead with a tenderness that seemed impossible for a man about to commit what was technically kidnapping and definitely extortion. 2 hours, he promised, and then we bring Lily home. Anthonia watched him leave the van, watched him walk up Dr. Smith's driveway with the confident stride of a man who owned everything he touched. The doorbell camera caught his knock. The interior cameras showed Dr. Smith rushing to answer, her smile bright and practiced. "Mr. Chen, right on time." Her voice came through crystal clear on the speakers. Jordan had used an alias. Of course he had. Chen Wei, a wealthy overseas investor looking for a discreet adoption. Junho had built an entire identity in 6 hours. Bank accounts, references, a backstory about an infertile wife desperate for a child who looked like them. Mrs. Smith, thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Jordan's accent was flawless. Anthonia had never heard him speak with that particular lilt before. How many versions of her husband existed? Of course. Please, come in. Can I offer you tea? Coffee? No, thank you. I'm on a tight schedule. You mentioned you had a child available. Infant, female, healthy? Dr. Smith's smile faltered slightly at his directness, but she recovered quickly. Yes, a beautiful baby girl. 3 months old. The mother, unfortunately, passed during delivery. No other family. Very sad situation. Anthonia's fingernails cut into her palms. Passed during delivery. The lies came so easily. May I see her? She's sleeping upstairs, but Mr. Chen, we should discuss terms first. I want to make sure we're aligned on expectations. You want to talk about money? Jordan's voice was flat. I want to talk about ensuring this child goes to a good home. Dr. Smith's tone had shifted, defensive now. The adoption process can be complicated. There are administrative costs. How much? $85,000. That includes all medical records, a birth certificate with your name listed as father, and complete confidentiality. Anthonia watched Jordan reach into his jacket, pull out a checkbook. I'll give you 90. Dr. Smith blinked. 90? 5,000 extra for discretion. I assume you can have everything ready within the week? Yes, of course. Then let's see the child. Dr. Smith led Jordan upstairs, her heels clicking against hardwood with each step. Anthonia watched on the screen as they entered a small bedroom converted into a nursery. Pink walls, a white crib, a mobile with butterflies. Everything designed to look innocent, maternal, normal. And there, sleeping in the crib, was Lily. Anthonia's breath caught. 3 months older than the last time she'd held her. Cheeks fuller, hair thicker, the crescent birthmark visible even through the onesie. Her daughter. Alive, breathing. Perfect. She's a good baby, Dr. Smith was saying, her voice syrupy sweet. Sleeps through the night, rarely fusses, very easy temperament. Jordan leaned over the crib, and Anthonia watched his mask crack for just a second. His hand trembled as he reached toward Lily, then pulled back, maintaining character. She looks healthy. Oh, she is. I've been caring for her myself. All her vaccinations are up to date. I have documentation. Pick her up. Dr. Smith hesitated. Mr. Chen, she's sleeping. Perhaps we should... I said, pick her up. I want to see how she responds to strangers. The doctor's smile tightened, but she complied, lifting Lily from the crib with practiced ease. The baby stirred, made a small sound of protest, then settled against Dr. Smith's shoulder. That cry, that same 3-second rhythm that had haunted Anthonia's nightmares. Something inside her snapped. Anthonia was out of the van before she even realized she'd moved. Her feet hit the pavement running, the surveillance team shouting behind her, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. That woman was holding her daughter. That woman who'd handed her a death certificate and pills for the pain and condolences that meant nothing was standing in a pink nursery playing mother to a child she'd stolen. The front door was unlocked. Anthonia took the stairs 2 at a time, her vision tunneling, her entire world reduced to the sound of that cry. She burst into the nursery. Dr. Smith spun around, eyes wide with shock. What? Who are you? Mr. Chen, do you know this woman? Give me my daughter. Anthonia's voice was unrecognizable, something feral and raw. I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Chen, please call security. Her name is Lily Marie Johnson. She was born on September 15th at Brighton Memorial Hospital. She weighed 6 pounds 4 ounces. She has a crescent birthmark on her left shoulder blade, and you told me she was dead. The color drained from Dr. Smith's face. That's impossible. This baby has my husband's birthmark, has my nose, has the same cry I heard for 3 seconds before you rushed her away. Anthonia's hands were shaking. "Give me my daughter." Jordan moved then, stepping between them with calm precision. "Dr. Smith, I should introduce myself properly. My name isn't Chen Wei." He pulled out his phone, turned it to show the surveillance footage playing in real time. "My name is Jordan Johnson, and for the last hour you've been attempting to sell me my own child while confessing to infant trafficking on 7 separate cameras." Dr. Smith stumbled backward, still clutching Lily. No, this is... You can't." "I can." Jordan's voice was death. "The question is whether you hand over my daughter voluntarily, or whether I take her from you. Choose quickly. My patience has limits." "I want a lawyer. I'm not saying anything without—" Anthonia lunged. She didn't think, didn't plan, just moved. Her feet closed around Lily, wrenching her from the doctor's arms with a strength born of 3 months of grief and rage. The doctor screamed, reaching for the baby, but Jordan was already there, his hand closing around Dr. Smith's wrist with enough force to make her gasp. "Don't touch them." Anthonia backed away. Lily clutched against her chest, the baby's warmth seeping through her shirt. Real, solid, alive. Her daughter was alive. Lily opened her eyes, dark brown just like Jordan's, and made that sound again, that 3-second cry, but this time Anthonia was there to answer it. "I've got you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Mama's got you. I've got you." The police arrived 16 minutes after Jordan made the call. Not to arrest him, to arrest Dr. Smith. Anthea sat in the nursery's rocking chair, Lily cradled against her chest while chaos erupted downstairs. She could hear Dr. Smith screaming about illegal surveillance and entrapment and unlawful seizure. She could hear Jordan's voice, calm and authoritative, explaining how he'd simply been conducting a private investigation after suspecting his daughter had been stolen. How the good doctor had confessed on camera to selling 8 infants. How he had documentation of everything. Juno appeared in the doorway, his expression gentle. "Mrs. Johnson, the officers need to take Lily for a medical examination, standard procedure for recovery cases." "No." Anthonia's arms tightened. "No, they're not taking her, not again." "Anthea." Jordan materialized beside Junho, his suit jacket gone, sleeves still rolled up. He knelt beside the rocking chair, his hand covering hers. "It's just for tonight. They need to verify she's healthy, get her medical records updated, and we need it documented for the custody hearing." "What custody hearing? She's our daughter." "Legally, right now, she's a stolen infant recovered from a kidnapping." His voice was calm, but Anthea could hear the strain underneath. "We need a judge to overturn the death certificate, restore our parental rights, and close any question about her identity. It's going to take time." "How much time?" "Without help, weeks, maybe months. Child services, DNA tests, court backlogs." He stood, pulled out his phone. "With help, 48 hours. Anthea watched him dial, watched him step into the hallway. She caught fragments of the conversation. "Judge Morrison, emergency petition. Yes, I understand it's after midnight. This is Jordan Johnson, and I'm calling in a favor." She'd been married to this man for 3 years and never knew he had judges on speed dial. The medical examination happened at Brighton Memorial. Cruel irony in returning to the place where this nightmare began. Anthea refused to let Lily out of her sight, standing beside the pediatrician while she checked vitals, measured growth, verified the crescent birthmark against hospital records. The doctor, not Dr. Smith, a different one with kind eyes and gentle hands, kept glancing at Anthea with something like pity. "She's healthy," the doctor finally said, "well fed, well cared for, all developmental milestones appropriate for her age. Physically, she's been looked after." Physically, as if that erased the 3 months of grief, the death certificate, the empty nursery gathering dust. "Can I take her home?" "Not yet. Child Protective Services has to interview you both, verify your home environment, standard protocol." "How long?" "Usually 72 hours, but..." The doctor glanced toward the door where Jordan stood, talking to a woman in a blazer. "I have a feeling you'll be expedited." She was right. The CPS interview happened at 3 a.m. in a hospital conference room. A tired social worker named Patricia asked questions from a checklist, while Anthea held Lily and answered on autopilot. Yes, they had a nursery prepared. No, there was no history of domestic violence.
Yes, they could provide financial stability. No, she didn't have a criminal record. Jordan did. Anthony learned that when Patricia asked him directly. I've never been convicted of anything. Arrested twice, charges dropped both times. I'm a businessman with complicated dealings. Sometimes people misunderstand my methods. Patricia looked like she understood perfectly but was choosing not to care. At 7 a.m., Judge Morrison signed an emergency order in his chambers. Anthony and Jordan stood before him, her still in yesterday's clothes, him in a fresh suit someone had delivered, while he reviewed Juno's evidence folders with clinical efficiency. This is highly irregular, the judge said. This entire situation is irregular, Your Honor. Jordan's voice held no deference. This wasn't a request. This was a transaction between equals. Judge Morrison looked at him for a long moment, then at Anthea holding Lily, then back at the evidence of 8 stolen children. Temporary custody granted, pending DNA confirmation. You'll have permanent restoration within the week. He signed with a flourish. And, Mr. Johnson, we're even now. Don't call me again. Understood, Your Honor. They walked out of the courthouse at sunrise, Lily asleep in Anthonia's arms. Legally theirs again, stolen, recovered, and returned through a combination of surveillance, coercion, and a judge who owed the city's most dangerous man a favor. Anthea should have been horrified by the corruption of it all. Instead, she just held her daughter tighter and let Jordan lead them home.
They had 6 days of peace before Victor Kozlov came calling. Antonia was in the nursery, the real nursery now, finally used, changing Lily's diaper when she heard unfamiliar voices downstairs. Male, accented, the kind of edge that made her instinctively pull her daughter closer. Jordan's response was immediate and sharp. "This is my home, Victor. You don't come to my home." "And yet here I am." The accent was thick, Eastern European. "Beautiful house, beautiful neighborhood, very domestic." Antonia carried Lily to the top of the stairs, staying out of sight but close enough to hear. Through the banister rails she could see Jordan standing in the foyer with 2 men. One was massive, built like a wall. The other was slim, older, with silver hair and a smile that made Antonia's skin crawl. "What do you want?" "I saw the news about Dr. Smith. Very impressive work, tracking her down, recovering your daughter. Quite the hero story." Victor's smile widened. "The news didn't mention how you found her, of course. Didn't mention the surveillance equipment, or the coerced confession, or the judge who signed papers at sunrise. They just see a grieving father who got his baby back." "Get to the point." "The point, Jordan, is that you're getting soft, playing house, playing father, acting like you can just walk away from what you are." Victor took a step closer. "But we both know the truth. We both know about the Red District War, about what you did to the Castellano family, about the bodies that never got found." Antonia's blood ran cold. She'd known Jordan was dangerous, had accepted that he ran a criminal empire, but bodies? Families disappearing? That was 5 years ago. And yet the memory is so fresh. I wonder what your wife would think if she knew the details, if she knew exactly how many people you've killed, if she knew what you're capable of when someone crosses you. Is that a threat? It's a reminder. Victor's voice hardened. "You owe me for the Patterson job. $2 million and 3 months of my time that went to hell because your crew botched the handoff. And now you're playing Father of the Year like you can just forget your debts? I don't owe you anything. Patterson was your operation, your risk. Our operation, our risk. And I'm done waiting for payment." Victor pulled out his phone, turned it to show Jordan. Antonia couldn't see the screen, but she saw her husband's face go white. "1 call to the FBI and they get every detail of your involvement. Photos, bank transfers, testimony from 3 witnesses who will suddenly remember everything. Your wife gets to raise your daughter alone while you rot in federal prison. Or you pay what you owe, with interest, $4 million delivered by end of week." Victor pocketed his phone. "And Jordan,
If something unfortunate happens to me, if I disappear like the Castellanos, all that evidence goes public automatically, so don't get creative." He left, his associate following, the front door closing with a soft click that sounded like a bomb detonating. Antonia watched Jordan stand in the foyer, his shoulders rigid, his hands clenched into fists. When he finally moved, it was to slam his fist into the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. She came downstairs slowly, Lily still in her arms. "Jordan?" He spun around, and the look on his face, raw anguish mixed with rage, made her stop 3 steps from the bottom. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." Her voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. "Bodies, Jordan? The Castellano family?" "Antonia, is it true?" He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the war playing out behind his eyes. The instinct to lie, to protect her, to maintain whatever remained of the carefully constructed image he'd built. But they were past that now, past the import-export business, past the gentle husband act. Yes. The word hung in the air between them like smoke. "They were trafficking children," Jordan continued, his voice hollow. "Girls mostly, 12, 13 years old, brought in from overseas. The Castellanos ran the operation for 6 years before I found out. I gave them a chance to stop. They refused. So you killed them." "So I killed them. No hesitation, no apology. All of them. Father, 3 sons, 2 lieutenants. And I'd do it again." Lily made a small sound against Antonia's shoulder, pulling her back from the edge of whatever abyss she was staring into. "Can you keep us safe?" Her voice cracked. "From Victor? From your past? From all of this?" Jordan's expression crumbled. "I don't know."
1 year later, Antonia stood in the kitchen watching Lily take her first real steps. Not the wobbly, uncertain attempts from last month, but actual steps. 3 of them. From the coffee table to Jordan's waiting arms. Her daughter's laugh was pure joy, her tiny hands reaching for her father's face with complete trust. Dr. Laura Smith had been sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. The trial had been brutal, televised, the kind of spectacle that made national news. 8 families testifying, 8 stolen children. The prosecutor had called it one of the most heinous cases of medical abuse in the state's history. Antonia had sat in the gallery every day, watching the woman who'd handed her a death certificate slowly disintegrate under the weight of her crimes. She'd felt nothing when the verdict came down. No satisfaction, no closure. Just the quiet relief of a chapter finally ending. The chapter with Victor Kozlov had ended differently. Jordan had paid the $4 million. Then he dismantled his entire organization piece by piece over 6 months, selling off territory, transferring operations to trusted lieutenants, converting dirty money into legitimate businesses through a maze of legal channels that gave Antonia headaches to think about. Juno had moved to Singapore to run security for a tech company. Marcus had opened a restaurant in Portland. The sprawling criminal empire Jordan had built over 15 years was systematically, carefully dissolved. Victor had called it weakness, had told everyone in the underworld that Jordan Johnson had gone soft, that fatherhood had neutered the deadliest man in the city. Jordan had let him talk, had let the rumors spread, had let his reputation crumble because reputation didn't matter anymore. Lily mattered, Antonia mattered. Everything else was just noise. They'd moved to a different house in a different neighborhood where no one knew who Jordan used to be, where neighbors borrowed sugar and complained about the HOA and invited them to block parties. Jordan claimed to be in real estate investment now, which wasn't technically a lie. Antonia had gone back to teaching, part-time at a small private school where she could bring Lily to the on-site daycare. It was normal, boring, safe, and Antonia had never been happier. "Again," Lily demanded, dropping to her bottom and crawling back to the coffee table for another attempt. "She's going to be running by next week," Jordan said, scooping their daughter up and blowing a raspberry against her stomach until she shrieked with laughter. "Then we're in real trouble." Antonia smiled, her hand unconsciously drifting to her stomach. She'd taken the test that morning. 3 positive lines, no ambiguity. She'd stared at it for 20 minutes, feeling joy and terror in equal measure. After everything with Lily,
After the grief and the trauma and the 3 months of thinking her daughter was dead, the idea of going through pregnancy again felt impossible. But here she was, 12 weeks along, past the dangerous first trimester, and she hadn't told Jordan yet because she didn't know how. "You're quiet." Jordan had noticed, of course. He always noticed. "Everything okay?" Lily grabbed a fistful of his hair, babbling something that might have been dada or might have been gibberish. Anthonia looked at them, her husband and daughter, bathed in afternoon sunlight, completely present in this moment, and felt something settle in her chest. "I'm pregnant." The words came out simple, unadorned. Jordan froze, Lily still dangling from his arms. His eyes met Anthonia's across the kitchen, and she watched 1,000 emotions flicker across his face. Fear, joy, disbelief, hope. "You sure?" 12 weeks. I have an appointment scheduled for next Wednesday with Dr. Chen at Mercy Hospital. Not Brighton Memorial. Never Brighton Memorial again. I wanted to wait until I was past the first trimester to tell you. Jordan set Lily down carefully, the toddler immediately crawling toward her toy basket. He crossed to Anthonia in 3 strides, his hands coming up to frame her face with a gentleness that still surprised her after everything she knew he was capable of. "How do you feel?" "Terrified." Her voice cracked. "After Lily, after everything that happened, I'm terrified of going through it again. Terrified something will go wrong. Terrified of nothing will go wrong." His voice was absolute. "We're using a different hospital, different doctors. I'll have security at every appointment. I'll personally verify every staff member. And Anthonia," he leaned his forehead against hers, "I'm going to be in that delivery room from start to finish. No one is taking this baby from us. No one." "You can't promise that." "I can. I will." He kissed her softly. "It's a boy," she whispered. "The ultrasound showed. I wanted to wait to tell you in person." Jordan's breath hitched. His hands moved to her stomach, pressing gently against the barely there swell. A boy. A boy. Lily chose that moment to toddle over, crashing into Jordan's legs and demanding up with all the authority of a tiny dictator. He lifted her, pulled Anthonia close, and the 3 of them, soon to be 4, stood in their kitchen while dinner burned forgotten on the stove. Outside, the sun set over their quiet suburban street. Somewhere across the city, Viktor Kozlov was probably plotting his next move. Somewhere, the remnants of Jordan's old empire continued operating without him. Somewhere, people who'd once feared the name Jordan Johnson were learning to forget it. But in this house, in this moment, none of that mattered. They were just a family. Imperfect, complicated, built on secrets and violence, and impossible love. But they were whole.
If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more thrilling tales. Don't forget to like this video, share it with friends who love intense drama, and leave a comment below telling us what you thought of Anthonia and Jordan's journey. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more stories like this one. Thank you for watching.